Let me bring in Arvind Sanger into this conversation as well. He's managing partner, Geosphere Capital Management. Arvind, great having you. How are you looking at the inflation print in the US as a result of which we've seen maybe 3-4 basis points of decline on the 10-year yield there? How are you reading into this print? Do you just believe that this is temporary in terms of the pullback and the fact that there's been this escalation and crude has gone back up towards $85? The upside risks, or rather the adverse risks to inflation, continue to remain, in your opinion?
Well, let's be clear. First thing is that this inflation print was a positive surprise. And despite, people factoring in that oil price had gone down, it was still much better than expected. So we don't know whether this was a fluke or this was start of a trend. If you ask me, my assumption is that this was not a start of a new trend. I think we still have an inflation problem. And as you mentioned, oil prices going up and persistently staying higher, which we think is likely because we think that, there isn't a durable peace possible in the U.S.-Iran situation. All of that means that inflation, notwithstanding the benign numbers that have come out for CPI and PPI in the last, 24, 48 hours, we are likely to see inflation higher. But, the market took a little bit of a sigh of relief in the last 2 days. I suspect with oil going up, that might get a little bit, it might be a bump in the road in that declaring that inflation is beaten might be too early to say.
Arvind, you have the naval blockade back for Iran, and despite that, you're not seeing much of a spike in crude. So is it that the crude market is now factoring in this to be a long-term, conflict which is coming into play, something what we saw with Russia and Ukraine as well?
Well, the crude markets are behaving like, despite the blockade, that the U.S. will be able to get enough oil flowing from the Omani side of the Strait of Hormuz. So what remains to be seen is how many ships can and are willing to risk any attacks from the Iranian side and transit the Strait of Hormuz. Right now, the oil market is betting that any dislocation is temporary, and it'll be largely managed by the U.S. By bringing ships in, from closer to the Omani side. So I think that the market's kind of ambivalent, but a multi-year kind of continuing conflict with limited passage through the Strait of Hormuz is definitely not being discarded in either short-dated oil, or when you look at long-dated oil. When we look at 27 oil price and others, the market is counting that at some point Trump is going to tackle, and there will be some settlement which will cause oil to start flowing again. So the risk remains, in my opinion, more on the upside. It's a disproportionate, more risk of upside oil prices than the sudden collapse in oil prices.
So, Arvind, what does it mean for investors right now? Is it going to be more of the same, or do you take cognizance of, the slight bit of sell-off here and there that we continue to see in semicon or some of the IT names as well?
So we've got a second, even more important theme going on right now, which is the whole AI theme and questions around the durability of that AI theme. So I think that there are a lot of nervousness. Anything else going on? There was news from New York State that they were pushing back on any new AI data center. So there's a lot of that is causing huge amount of volatility in the AI space. You're seeing that clearly in the Korean market, most notably, but even in the U.S. market. So I think that the AI space is probably more important than oil prices in terms of short-term global market sentiment. And I think when you combine these two, and given the uncertainties out there, I think the markets are going to remain volatile and range-bound till we get clarity on both fronts. And I think, I'm a medium to long-term AI bull in terms of spending and the adoption of AI. But that doesn't mean that the stocks may not have gotten ahead of themselves and there'll be some profit taking and then we can resume this. So I think we're in for a period of volatility. From an investor standpoint, it makes sense to be a little more cautious while waiting for clarity to emerge on both fronts.
Okay, interesting. Arvind, great to have you today on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.